What's up YouTube and welcome to another video on the Ashen Chevalier. Today we're going through chapter 4 of Trials of Cold Steel, so if you haven't watched the previous videos, as usual, check out the card or the description for a playlist. In chapter 4 we venture through Heimdall, the Vermilion capital, and the Imperial Liberation Front become bolder, officially announcing themselves via extreme circumstances. It's a long one, so without further ado, let's jump into the pits of Gehenna. Chapter 4 opens with Captain Claire reporting to the Imperial Chancellor Osborne that armed conflicts in the Nord Highlands have been averted. However, they did demand that we hand over the mercenaries as part of the terms of agreement. Captain Claire acknowledges that the summer festival is likely to be the next target and has already come up with a plan to bolster security as much as possible. The Chancellor proposes that they use them as a test, which I imagine is referring to Class 7, but before Claire is able to answer, there is a knock on the door. Claire leaves and Imperial Governor Regulus and the Chancellor have a short chat before we move to another room in Valflame Palace. A blonde-haired man and a blonde-haired boy talk amongst each other about the upcoming trade conference. If you've played the previous games, particularly Trials in the Sky, you'll likely recognize the older man as Prince Oliver, and then you can safely assume the boy is his younger brother. But anyway, it seems that Oliver is teaching his younger brother about politics and the trade conference. He states that it will be President Rocksmith representing the Republic of Calvid, Prince Albert from the Principality of Remeferia, Crown Princess Claudia will be representing Labelle in place of the Queen, and Mayor Croix and Speaker McDowell from Crossbow State. For Erebonia, the Imperial Chancellor Osborne and Prince Oliver himself will be in attendance. As they continue to talk further about politics, we hear a lovely chirpy female voice and the younger boy calls her Alphan, and Alphan in turn tells Cedric to stop taking everything so seriously. Alphan goes on to tease Cedric, telling him that he should learn to be more of a man instead of blushing head to toe when a lady asks him to dance. Oliver asks Alphan if she has decided on her dance partner for the upcoming garden party, as she always seems to avoid dancing at these sorts of functions. She says that she does have someone in mind but may struggle to get him to say yes, also confirming that he is a noble. Ooh, I wonder who it could be. Alphan moves swiftly on to the next topic, telling Prince Oliver that she has a proposal that she would like to discuss with him, and the scene fades over to St. Austria's girls' school, specifically to a young girl who has a letter in her hands. She mentions that it's from Rean and begins to read it. Dear Miss Schwarzer, stopping to mock Rean for referring to her as such even though she is his own sister. As she continues to read, she becomes more and more tense. It seems that the topic is pretty serious. And now, back in Trista, Class 7 are having swimming lessons, given that it's July and summer has just started. Sara talks about learning vital skills of survival, for example CPR, and she teases Rean and Elise about a demonstration, but don't worry, it doesn't actually happen. Next, they are swimming lengths and being timed. While Gaius and Emma are doing their lengths, Elisa, Rean and Elia mention that Gaius is pretty fast, which makes sense as he used to practice in Lake Lacrima. Moving on to Emma, Elisa mentions that she's pretty quick too, but that's not what she envies. Rean is a little confused and then eventually gets it, to which Elisa responds with, "You don't need to get it." To be fair, she did kinda set that one up herself. She then tries to reprimand him for staring at girls in swimsuits, and Elia says that it's kinda hard not to stare at the girls in Class 7, which I totally agree with. But more importantly, he says that even the guys are pretty handsome too. Elia notices that Rean has a scar on his chest and asks what it is, but Rean just says it's some kind of mark and he doesn't know how he got it. Maki and Eustace will forever be bros, even to the extent of finishing with the exact same times. They're just so fated. Sara wants to do a head-to-head competition and so they partner up. Elisa picks Emma, Eustace picks Marcus, see, bros. Laura chooses V, and of course Sara picks on Rean, leaving Gaius and Elia, and so the minigame starts. Laura and Fee are the final pair to go, but before they proceed, Laura speaks with her and asks if she'd like to give it everything that she has this time. The rest of the class are a little confused about this. Laura continues that she knows Fee hasn't tried her utmost, similar to the way that she is on the battlefield, and that she wishes to go against Fee at her best. And so, the contest begins. It's a tough contest, and it's almost as though they both finished at the exact same time, despite the fact that Fee is clearly shorter than Laura, but that's not all it comes down to. Gaia says that it was Laura's win, even if it was just because she is taller. Back in homeroom, Sara reminds everyone about their practical exams and the summer festival. It turns out that Heimdall celebrates a month later than everyone else, and this is because July was the month that Emperor Dracos brought an end to the Civil War. For that reason, the summer festival was held later in order to combine both the festival and the celebrations of the war ending. Sara mentions that she remembers Instructor Thomas talking about this at one point, but she wormed herself out of the convo. A few of the class members make some comments about Thomas, but Fee's is the best. Simply that he doesn't know how to shut up. You go, girl. After the class has been dismissed, Rean and the boys are huddled around Gaius' desk, and the girls are around Elise's desk. Fee is sitting by herself and doesn't really have much to say. She eventually gets up and leaves the classroom, at which point Emma runs after her. Elise implores Laura to get along with her, considering she is her senior after all. The boys then ask if Rean can do anything to help them make up, and Rean is like, why me? They go on to say that Rean has done it before, at least partly, and he just seems like the natural go-to for things like this. Elliot's mind is elsewhere, but when he does join in, he agrees that Rean is the best for the job, and that it was because of him that Marcius and Eustace became buddies. Marcius is like, who the hell became buddies? Eustace chimes in with, you must be sniffing roses in the Garden of Delusions if you think I'm a friend of his. And with that, they all depart to their club meetings. Rean wanders around the academy field and hears two voices talking about someone being the key, but the details aren't clear. Of course, as a player, it's obvious that they are referring to Rean, but he himself is none the wiser. As he ventures around the back of the storehouse, he recognizes one of the voices as Emma's, and she is there alone with the black cat. Now Rean wonders who the second person was, and Emma awkwardly says it was a friend on her Arcus unit. Rean asks if Emma knows the cat, and she says that it is her supervisor, which totally throws Rean for a loop. Emma eventually corrects herself to this is a friend. After making up a story of how they met in Trista, Emma picks the cat up and begins to walk away. Rean then asks if she knows the cat's name, and Emma says that it is Celine. Something definitely seems suspicious about that, huh? Anyway, Rean leaves the school grounds and runs into Instructor Nightheart at the gate. Nightheart explains that he is thankful for the group's intervention during the incident in the Nord Highlands and that he acknowledges that they played an integral part in resolving the matter swiftly. He then hopes to help Rean understand that though they performed admirably, the army is an organization that requires structure and order in order to do its job in the most efficient manner, and highlights that teaching to their students should be their main instructor's job, i.e. Sara. Naya almost reveals Sarah's background to us, but she appears and cuts him off and reprimands him for broadcasting a lady's secret. Some people never change. Eventually, Instructor Thomas joins them and tries to invite them all for a drink, and the other two instructors try desperately to get out of it. Rean manages to slip away, and as he does, Sara shouts, "What kind of heartless monster are you? Get back here, Rean schwarzer!" Sara, I get the feeling they don't want to hear another history lecture by Thomas. The next day opens with Rean collecting his student council tasks and spending some time with his classmates, inevitably making his way to the old schoolhouse. He gathers some of his classmates and they head down to the 4th floor. Interestingly, the higher elements are in play on this floor, just like in Nord. They prep themselves and make it to the end of the floor and fight a monster once again. Upon its defeat, Rean affirms that there is someone or something testing them through this dungeon, and just as they decide to make their way out, they hear a loud rumble and shaking on the floor. As they head back to the elevator room, they notice a huge red door has appeared out of nowhere. They attempt to find a locking mechanism to no avail, and so they resort to assailing it with their weapons, which also fail to produce any results. Rean gets a little closer to it and feels a strain on his chest again, and the screen flashes the word reveal. Emma is noticeably quiet yet again, but they move on, leaving the old schoolhouse and heading outside. Rean is on his way back to the Dawns when he meets his sister Elise Schwarzer at the gates. Elise reprimands him for not visiting her in Heimdall himself, resulting in her travelling all the way to Trista. Rean comes up with a bunch of excuses and eventually gets to the point that he felt that Elise was being distant with him the last time that they met, hence he thought he was being a bother and decided to leave her alone. Elise says that it may have seemed that way, but it's a personal thing that she doesn't want to talk about. She swears to Adios' name that she would never think of Rean as a bother and moves on to the actual reason she came to visit. Elise presents the last letter that Rean sent to her and is unhappy with the last line. It's possible that after I graduate I'll join the army. Even if I don't though, I doubt I'll be coming back home to live. He also goes on to say that he wants to pay mum and dad back, almost as though he intends to sever ties with them. Elise asks if he is really considering bowing out of succeeding their father as the head of the family, but that is exactly what Rean is thinking. He does not wish to become the next Baron Schwarzer. Elise is noticeably distressed by this, but Rean continues that it's obvious he'd feel that way since he was adopted, and he suggests that Elise marries a good man and he succeeds her father instead. Rean explains that when their father took him in 12 years ago, he got a lot of flack for it and eventually stopped taking part in noble meetings, etc. He wants them to be able to return to that without any issues cropping up about letting a non-noble succeed in a noble family. This really upsets Elise and she cuts him off to tell him that he doesn't understand how her father, mother, and even herself feel at all. She shouts that she hates him and runs off crying. Rean remains where he is and seems defeated, only until Elisa and friends wonder what he is doing just standing there. They are noticeably angry at Rean for the way this interaction has gone, and they demand that he goes and looks for his sister. And so the search begins. Rean bumps into Laura, who has been informed of the situation, and she asks if his choice isn't just his desire to escape that life. He hesitates but agrees that Laura is right, he is just running away from this at the moment. The search continues onto the academy field where he meets Fee, who has also been brought up to speed on the events. Rean tells her that he isn't a noble by blood and therefore he just wouldn't fit into the noble society, and was hoping that Elise would understand that. Fee talks about her time with Zephyr and explains that even though they weren't her real family, the time they spent together was so precious that she would never second guess it, nor would she ever want to leave them because that's the one place she can call home. Rean continues and ends up just outside of the gates where he bumps into Crow. Turns out Crow saw Elise near the old schoolhouse entrance talking to Patrick. Rean immediately becomes concerned considering their last run-in with each other and bolts towards the old schoolhouse. The scene switches to show us Elise walking toward the old schoolhouse entrance, and she is thinking out loud, still frustrated that he never thinks about what would make him happy. At that point, Patrick wanders over and asks what she is doing here, recognizing the Saint Astraea uniform. He introduces himself and so does Elise. He comments that she has a lovely sounding name, and to be honest, it is quite a pretty name. He makes the connection of the name Schwarzer, asking if she is Rean's sister, and then goes on to call him a crescent, at which point Elise cuts him off as she can see that they aren't on the best of terms with each other, and then she runs off towards the old schoolhouse. Rean and Crow meet Patrick outside of the old schoolhouse, and Rean is immediately on the offense, asking where Elise is in a pretty aggressive tone. Patrick is clearly a little frightened by this and simply says that he approached her only because she was crying and didn't do anything to her, but as she ran toward the old schoolhouse, he followed her, but she is nowhere to be seen. Crow wonders if she had gone into the old schoolhouse, but it's usually locked, so that shouldn't be possible. It turns out that the door is in fact open, and they venture inside to find her. The scene cuts again to a little earlier where Elise is inside the old schoolhouse, and Celine is standing at the other doorway. Elise follows her to the elevator and it suddenly starts moving, taking her to the 4th floor where the red doorway appeared. As she approaches the door, it begins to whir and these words appear on the screen. Potential Awakener waveform confirmed within 50 Arch, commencing the first trial. And with that, the door begins to open, and out comes a giant suit of armor. Up on the entrance level, Rean, Patrick and Crow make their way into the schoolhouse and hear a scream, and the boys immediately move to get to the 4th floor as soon as they can. Upon arrival, Elise is laying on the floor and the suit of armor is getting closer and closer. Seeing Elise in danger triggers something deep inside of Rean as he screams out in pain himself and his eyes turn red and his hair white. He readies his touchy and with incredible speed attacks the suit of armor. It seems as though Rean is fighting against this power that has surfaced, eventually able to contain it, returning his appearance to normal. He mutters, "No, not going to be swallowed by it anymore." He thinks to himself that he does not have a chance of winning, but he has to try in order to take back himself and what he lost that winter's day. The fight against the suit of armor begins again, this time with the help of Crow and Rean in his normal state. As the fight comes to an end, Elise regains consciousness and thanks Rean for protecting her just like he did back then, though she acknowledges that this time something was different, and Rean agrees that he was able to pull through somehow. Of course this doesn't make sense to us at the moment, but in time. The whole of Class 7 finally arrive alongside Instructor Sara, Toa, Angelica and George as well. Before the scene cuts back to the dormitory, Emma makes a shocked expression which soon turns to a rather sour look aimed toward the ceiling of the schoolhouse. It seems as though she is looking at Celine, who is standing up there, and she is not pleased by any means whatsoever. A few days later, it was time for the practical exams. Sara asks Rean to pick a partner. I went with Gaius. They are pit against Laura and Fee. Now, if you know anything about our characters at this point, it's obvious that Laura and Fee could destroy both Rean and Gaius simply due to their power and speed. But that's only if they fight as a proper pair. Given the tension between the two, however, Rean and Gaius emerge victorious. After the whole class has their paired battles, it was time to find out where they were headed for their next field study. While standing in wait, Elliot speaks to Rean, telling him that he seems to really care for his sister, but to him it seems that it's way more than just devotion from her side. He makes a point to mention that Elise is turning 16 soon, and that is when they make their entry into high society. Rean says that he hopes that she will find a guy who is worthy of her, as he won't permit any old noble to marry her, to which Elliot is somewhat surprised. Elise wonders how he could be so dense and that she feels sorry for his sister. Anyway, this time their field study is taking both groups to Heimdall, the Vermilion capital. The groups will be split as Group A, Rean, Laura, Fee, Marcius and Elia. Group B will be Elisa, Emma, Eustace and Gaius. Rean can't seem to shake the feeling that he is being used. Again. Well, don't fix what isn't broken, right? The next morning, Rean, Marcius and Elia talk a little about Laura and Fee's tension, acknowledging that it's not that they hate each other, it's just that they are incredibly different. Fee is a Jaeger, and Laura is the daughter of a noble military family. Their backgrounds couldn't be any different. Laura and Fee make their way over and assure the group that their intention is not to cause any conflict and they will do their utmost to form a combat link, and so they all proceed to the station. As soon as they arrive in Heimdall, Captain Claire greets them and leads them to a meeting room where they speak with Imperial Governor Karl Regnitz, Macius's father, and I bet you wouldn't have guessed it, but yep, he is also a member of the board of directors, so that makes Eustace's brother, Elisa's mother, and Macius's father all members of the board. Coincidence? I think not. Moving on, he explains that the tasks will be split in two, one set for the western half and another for the eastern half of this gargantuan city. Group A, i.e. Rean's group, gets the eastern half, which actually includes the area where both Elia and Marcius used to live. Each group is handed an envelope of their field study tasks with a set of keys. They are first tasked with locating the doors for these keys, and so they go their separate ways, taking the tram to their destinations. Group A arrives at Alto Street, which is where Elliot's family stays, and so they decide to pay a visit there first. His sister Fiona is at home, and as soon as she realizes her little brother has come to visit, she runs up and gives him a nice warm hug. What an adorable little family. We learn that Elliot's father is Olaf Craig of the Imperial Army, perhaps the most decorated general in the army of all, and is responsible for leading the 4th Armoured Division, which boasts the greatest firepower in the entire armed forces. Cool, that's a name to live up to. Elliot seems a little concerned that the group has learned who his father is, but swiftly moves the conversation on to see if Fiona is aware of which building they will be staying in. She has an idea, and so they take their leave. Once they arrive, they realize that the building they are staying in is actually one of the old guild branches in Heimdall. There is another, and therefore they assume that Group B will likely be set up there. They drop their belongings in their rooms and proceed with their quests. Not long after, they bump into Group B in the area that overlaps for the two and agree to meet up for lunch later. One of their tasks lead them to Hotel del Himmel in the Garnier district, where they are charged with exterminating a monster in the tunnels below Heimdall. As they make their way to the tunnels, they meet Vita Clotilde, the legendary opera singer, the Azure Diva, who Marquis and Ellie are incredibly fond of. She is very attractive, and even Fee notices that. Speaking of Fee, once Vita leaves, she seems to suspect something, but we move on to the monster extermination anyway. As they approach the monster, Fee and Laura take point and challenge themselves to form a combat link with one another. Unfortunately, it severs during battle. Nevertheless, they take care of the monster, but Laura requests that she is taken off the front line to a more supporting role for the duration of the field study. Fee takes issue with this and says that she should be the one to step back, but Laura reaffirms that it is her own immaturity that refuses to accept Fee, and therefore it is her that should step back. Rean rejects both requests and states that it's clear Laura and Fee's combat styles fit with each other perfectly. Laura is the knight, dominating the battlefield with her strength and power, and Fee is the vanguard type, overwhelming the opposition with her speed, which would create openings for Laura. They just need to find the reason that they are not able to link with each other, and they would be unstoppable together, and so Rean steps back. They make their way back to the hotel, but on their way they hear some music through one of the walls in the tunnels. Fee suspects a particular wall, and so they investigate and find a switch. Upon pressing it, a whole new tunnel is revealed and the music becomes clearer. They come up on the other side of this tunnel and realize it leads to Mara Park, where Elliot meets his friends from the music academy. After talking for a little while, the group makes their way back to Elliot's home, where Fiona has graciously prepared dinner for them. Upon finishing up, they talk in Elliot's room, where he talks about having to give up his dream of pursuing music due to his father's preconceptions of what a man of Erebania should do. Elliot proceeded to do some research and found that Thor's military academy did both music and military exercises, and for that reason, he met his father halfway and enrolled there with the hope that he could still pursue music as well as study as his father has wished. Fee asks if he regrets coming to Thor's, and Elliot explains that he doesn't. At least this way he's doing both and can make his own decision when it comes to an end. Laura and Flue really take these words to heart, and once they leave Elliot's home, Laura challenges Fee to a duel to settle their differences. As Elliot stayed with his sister for the night, it was Marquis, Rean, Laura and Fee that made their way to Mara Park, as it is the most open area. Here, Laura put some conditions on the duel. If she wins, she would like Fee to tell her about her past. She continues that there is something about Fee's strength that she couldn't accept, and she knew from the first moment that they met that Fee was holding back. Given Fee's build, her proficiency in combat is extraordinary, which is far too different from what Laura is used to through the way of the sword. Laura goes on about Fee being a Jaeger, and if knighthood is virtuous, what else can a Jaeger be but corrupt? Fee is noticeably saddened by this, but continues to listen as Laura explains that it was because of this that she felt as though she couldn't accept Fee. But hearing about Elliot's hardship, she thought deep down and realized that it has nothing to do with one another's values, and in Laura's own heart, she had already deemed Fee worthy of her trust. It was her mind that was preventing her. And this is likely what was affecting them from forming a link through Arcus. Fee wonders why Laura wants to know about her past, and the response is actually very warming. She simply states that she wants to know because she likes her. She wants to know what shaped Fee to be the person that she is. They both agree to the terms, and the duel begins, with Rean as the officiator. They charge up and are about to launch their special moves, S-crafts, and Rean jumps in to stop them before contact is made. The battle ends with Fee and Laura trying to catch their breath, and Rean says that neither of them won, calling it a draw. But Fee explains that Laura actually won. Jaegers are used to fighting during the night, and even then Laura went head to head against her, and so Fee tells everyone about her past. She was part of a Jaeger corps called Zephyr. Before that, her memories are simply explosions and battlefields. Fee wandered a war-torn hotspot on the outskirts of some country she didn't even know the name of, until a man approached her and took her in. He was called the Jaeger King, and he was a leader of Zephyr, who were pretty well known. He became the closest thing to a father that Fee had ever known, and that they were very much like family rather than a typical Jaeger corps. Fee's first battle was when she was 10, and from then she picked up a nickname, Sylphide. It was last year when her boss died in a clash with another Jaeger corps called the Red Constellation, which may ring a bell for anyone that has played the previous games. The clash between these two giant Jaeger corps ended with both leaders passing on, and after that Zephyr disbanded, leaving Fee alone once again. Whilst wandering again, she found Sara, who invited her to join Thor's military academy, and that's how they first met. Now that Laura understands Fee for the person that she is and her experiences, she feels that it is a good base for her to continue building a solid friendship upon. They both help each other up and turn their attention to Maki and Rean, challenging them to a duel as a mighty duo that they are. Despite both Laura and Fee having just been through a duel with each other, they completely overwhelmed the guys and successfully formed a combat link. Yay, the whole group is together as one unit. They finally get to return and get some sleep, but not before being stopped by some soldiers after receiving reports of some students making a racket. The next morning, they fill Elliot in and go to have breakfast at his house with Fiona. Their day soon begins again with new tasks that were delivered to the old guild where they were staying. They make their way over to Heimdall Port, where they find out that there is another set of tunnels beneath the Vermilion capital, and it has yet another monster wreaking havoc, so onwards they go to defeat it. As they begin to head back, they notice yet another switch revealing a hidden tunnel, this time because Fee sensed a breeze in a particular area, and so they venture through and are led to the Ost district where Maki had slipped before joining the academy. He takes this opportunity to invite them over to his house and offers them tea or coffee as they sit for a much needed rest. Fee notices a family picture of little Maki as his father and another lady which they assume is his sister. Although it was close enough, it's actually a cousin of his on his father's side who passed on around 6 years ago. Rean prods a little further and wonders if her passing is the reason Maki has such a strong hatred for nobility, and it seems like our head-patting boy was right on the mark. Cue story time. So as we know, Maki's family are commoners through and through, but this didn't stop his father from climbing up the ladder to become an important government official. His cousin sister, for whom I'll refer to as Sis from now on, spent a lot of time with them after Maki's mother passed away. She was essentially just like a real sister to Marquis and a real daughter to his father. She had many admirers among the city, but one in particular was a subordinate working at City Hall, born to a noble family and the heir of a count. They fell in love and began a relationship, much to the dislike of Marquis, but he does agree that they made a good couple. The issue arose when the two of them got engaged, as his family was blatant about undermining the relationship. It turns out that on short notice, House Cayenne proposed an arranged marriage for the man, and of course his family were angry that he would settle for a mere commoner like Sis. His family proceeded to make her life a living hell in secret, of course, given Marquis' father's important position. For that reason, Sis didn't say a thing to anyone about the way that she was being treated until one day it was too much for her to handle and she took her own life. The man betrayed his love for her at the last moment. He would say things such as, "I told her that I would treasure her as my mistress if she just accepted that we couldn't be married. I don't understand it. Why would she take her own life?" It was from that moment that his father began to work even harder and inevitably wrested control of City Hall from the noble faction thanks to his ally Chancellor Osborne. Due to this huge loss, Maki had to direct his hatred at someone, anyone. At first it was her fiancé, next his family, then the family of the Duke that intervened, and in the end it was targeted at the nobility and the idea of social classes overall. Deep down though, he knew that it was wrong. People are individuals after all. Marquis makes a crack at Eustace that he didn't do much to help him realize that. but Rean and Laura certainly helped him realize that not all commoners are good people and not all nobles are bad people either. He even recognizes that Sis's fiance did love her, but he just wasn't strong enough to shield her from the ugliness of it all. Wow. If that isn't character growth, I don't know what is. I mean, when I first played the game, of course I disliked Maki's attitude, but I think Falcon really captured that until you experience the same thing somebody else has, you truly wouldn't understand why they are the way that they are. Shout out to Nihon Falcon for absolutely nailing his character development. Elliot tries to persuade Maki to actually become friends with Eustace too, but Maki says that he can go choke on a bomb. I might be paraphrasing. Anyway, their coffee break comes to an end, and as they are about to proceed with the rest of the tasks, Rean receives a call on his Arcus from Governor Agnes. He explains that he wants to give them an extra task. There appears to have been a burglary at the jewelers in Garnier district, and in a bizarre move, the culprit has specifically requested Group A. They arrive at the jewelers and get a bit more of an explanation of what has happened, including the note that Governor Agnes mentioned, and that it was from Phantom Thief B. Aside from being addressed to Class 7, the note also contains a riddle for them to solve. As well as this, the mysterious Phantom Thief promises that the stolen tiara will be returned safely if they are able to solve the riddles. And so they travel through a few different areas and manage to find riddle after riddle, bumping into Baron Blue Blanc and finally bringing them to Heimdall Port, where they are led to a tram and find the tiara at the back. The driver, who is suspiciously covering his face, wonders if Phantom Thief B was on the last tram ride here, but doesn't remember anyone unusual looking. Other members of the group almost commend him for achieving such a crime without leaving any traceable tracks, whilst Rean is intently staring at the tram driver. He then says it's time to put an end to this charade, don't you, Baron Blue Blanc, or should I call you Phantom Thief B? And with that, he finally reveals himself with his iconic laugh. Rean explains that it was pretty clear since he decided to show himself at the Crystal Garden, where one of the riddles were hidden, and that it was likely he'd come back at the end game. Blue Blanc is impressed, and the group resolve to put him under arrest, and just at that moment he teleports atop a nearby bridge, and shortly after he disappears. After returning the tiara, they receive another call, this time from Instructor Sara. She asks them to gather outside St. Estria's girls' school in the Sanct district once they are done with their field study, and tells them that Group B will be there too. As they arrive in the Sanct district and outside of the girls' school, Fee wonders if Laura wanted to come here at all. She says that her father did recommend it, but there were no classes on martial arts, and for that reason alone, she opted to look elsewhere, which totally makes sense for a character like Laura. Soon after, they hear a lovely voice calling out Rean's name. It's Elise, Rean's sister, and although she is expecting some visitors, she wasn't told who they were. Elise escorts the group to the Rose Garden further into school grounds, where they meet the person that actually requested them, and it's none other than Princess Alphan. They sit around the table and talk a little. Princess Alphan seems to be quite the lovely and angelic type that she was pumped up to be. Honestly, she is a very refreshing and playful character who always seems to make me laugh with her jokes and teasing of Elise. Poor Elise, having to deal with that on a daily basis. Aww. After speaking with Eustace and Laura, Alphan turns her attention to Rean and highlights that she is particularly glad to meet him, as Elise has told her so much about him. She asks a teensy-weensy favour of him that she would like to join Elise in thinking of Rean as her dear brother as well. Both Rean and Elise are shocked by this request, but Alphan continues that Elise has spoken so highly of him that he already feels like family. Since she has two brothers already, it wouldn't take her too long to adjust to another. Not quite sure it works like that, but okay. Alphan then goes on to state that it wasn't actually her that they are supposed to be meeting, and just at that moment we hear a very familiar voice in the distance, and in comes Prince Oliver, dressed as Olivier. Oliver also introduces himself as the debaucherous prince and the ornamental chairman of the board at Thor's Military Academy. Now in his Prince Oliver attire, he joins them at the table and does his best to explain a few things to Class 7. Firstly, he is actually the one that established the class to begin with. It has always been a tradition that a member of the Imperial family serves as the chairman of the board, but given his escapades in Labelle 2 years ago, he had a change of heart, and this has resulted in him setting a number of plans into motion, one of which is to bring the winds of change to Thor's military academy. It was in fact Oliver himself who offered up the idea of mixing both nobles and commoners in the same class. Rean chimes in and says that he is beginning to understand the reason that Class 7 was created for, and why they are being shipped all over Erebonia. It is because they are being given the opportunity to see firsthand the conflicts between the two factions. Oliver explains that it's not just between the two factions, but between culture and technology, between the capital and provinces, as well as between the nations themselves. Some members of the class are skeptical as to whether they are able to achieve such lofty goals. However, the remainder feels as though they are getting closer to that ideal, offering Oliver some confidence in his plan. He states that although he does not have a say in the day-to-day running of the class and their curriculum, he wished to at least meet them face to face, hence why Princess Alphan organized this meeting. Alphan says that she couldn't possibly turn down such a sincere request from her brother, but it also gave her a chance to meet Rean as well. Every given opportunity, Alphan. Oliver goes on to explain that it's apparent that the 3 members of the board of directors, i.e. Arena Reinford, Rufus Alberea, and Carl Regners, have their own ideals and direction, but ultimately he puts his trust in the youth of Erebonia to be the shining light to push back the darkness of the country. He also mentions that Principal Van Dyke is a huge advocate of Class 7 and contributed to the team of instructors that are responsible for them. The class immediately picks up on Instructor Sara being a part of this team as well, and Oliver states that she is in fact one of the strongest people in Erebonia. This shocks the class, and Alphan tells us that she was known as the Purple Lightning, further triggering the class. Some members of the class seem to have a good idea about Sara's identity now, but to accentuate this further, Oliver claims that she is one of the Empire's most famous bracers, being the youngest to achieve rank A. The meeting concludes and Elise sees Class 7 out of the school. She seems to be upset at Rean for something that happened and leaves him wondering what he could have done. Princess Alphan had invited Rean to be her dance partner at the upcoming Crystal Garden party. The whole group is fairly shocked at this, including Elise. Alphan does continue to press on, making Rean feel guilty for essentially turning the invite down, and Oliver makes a comment that she really knows how to twist a knife. Alphan prods further, wondering if Rean is already courting somebody. We get a few silent or shocked responses from the girls of Class 7, and then Oliver asks Rean who it is that has conquered the battlefield of his heart. Fortunately, Alphan backs off but tells him that she will be turning 16 next year and wishes for him to seriously consider her invitation. Back outside of the school, Elise scarily says that Her Highness really seems to have taken a liking to him, and Eustace says that he should have accepted the invitation. Sara soon makes an appearance, followed swiftly by Captain Claire of the RMP. It turns out that the rest of the field study is being put on hold and that Class 7 will instead be assisting Claire with security detail as they suspect Gideon and the rest of his terrorist group to act on the day of the summer festival. Naturally, Class 7 agrees to help out as planned and the day ends with them returning to their lodging, with Sara joining Group A. Of course, upon arrival, she revels in being back at the guild branch that she once worked from, and they discuss the patrols a little more, as well as hearing about Sara's background and how she found Fee. She eventually heads upstairs, and Maki makes a comment that she never changes, but Fee wonders if that actually is the case. I mean, she was definitely more forthcoming with information about her past as opposed to being as tight-lipped as she normally is. Anywho, later that night at the Heimdall port, we see Gideon addressing a group of citizens and essentially giving them a pep talk for the events ahead. The next morning, Sara heads off to the RMP's command post but asks Group A to let her know if anything unusual turns up, and so the patrols begin. Whilst walking around Vanquist Street, Fee notices a suspicious guy turning a corner away from the street. At Heimdall Port, it appears that a large amount of younger workers just up and quit yesterday, and now with the summer festival just around the corner, they are short of workers. That seems to suspiciously line up with the Gideon scene a little while ago, huh? Next, they go to check the door to the underground tunnels in Ost District. Here, Fee notices that the footprints that they would have left when coming from this door have disappeared. This raises suspicion that the door has likely been used after they had exited yesterday, and whoever used it wiped their footprints away, and, in turn, Class 7's footprints too. So the question is, who exactly went in here and for what purpose? The next area is Garnier District, specifically Hotel de Himmel, where they meet Vita Clotilde again. She mentions that she remembers seeing a suspicious group of people just outside of the hotel last night, hats pulled over their faces, etc. The group continues by making their way through the underground tunnel to Mara Park, and it becomes apparent that the soldiers stationed here did not actually know about the tunnels. Oops, I guess we found a hole in their security. As soon as they finish their patrol, Sara calls Rean on his Arcus and asks them to watch Princess Alphan from Valflin Palace to Mara Park, ensuring that she arrives there safely. Whilst the princess and Elise are on their way to Mara Park, Alphan teases Elise a little about asking her brother to the dance party, eventually saying that Elise seems to have a chance since Rean doesn't seem to have a girlfriend yet. But Elise says that it may be better if he was to find someone, both for her and himself. Once Group A have confirmed the safe arrival of Princess Alphan, they go to Drykel's Plaza, where they meet Toa and Angelica. Toa had heard about potential terrorist activity from Sara and decided to make her own way here. Angelica makes it pretty clear that Sara has definitely been slacking off, since it turns out that Toa is actually the one that does the paperwork and travel arrangements, and is the liaison for the contacts in each region. Just when we started to give Sara a bit more credit. Angelica wishes she could get Alphan, Elise and Fee at the same place at the same time, and comes up with a group name for them, the Fabulous 15s. That's actually pretty good. Elliot tells Fee to watch out since she is being co-opted to a sketchy sounding group, and Fee's response is, sounds good to me. Fee's awesome though. Shortly after, Crow joins in on the chit chat, and it seems as though he lost his bet. But Angie didn't. Crow tells him to stop feeding up Lady Luck. Rean and the group decide to head off and patrol once more before the festival begins in full-fledged. But just as they are about to make their way, the water fountains start going out of control. Toa, Crow and Angie begin to evacuate the citizens, and Rean's group is about to jump in as well, but Toa reminds them that they have something more important to worry about, Princess Alphan. This is just a diversion, and there are monsters roaming around in Mara Park. As soon as they arrive at the Crystal Garden, they see that Elise and Princess Alphan are being held hostage by Gideon, and Maki, as his father, appears to be injured. Gideon goes to his Flue and summons some monsters to attack, and in the meantime he escapes with the two girls. After their defeat, Patrick looks after the Imperial Governor, and Class 7 jumps down the hole which leads to some more tunnels underneath the garden. Gideon speaks with the girls as they are going deeper through the tunnels and assures the princess that their life is in no danger, but they cannot allow a certain person among the Imperial ranks to live. Rean's group finally catches up, and he tells the terrorists that they are better off surrendering, and that if there is even a scratch on either of the two girls, they will wish that the police found them before he did. Gideon orders the two accompanying terrorists to use Anesthetic on the girls and goes to his flute, summoning yet another monster. This time it's a bone dragon called Sora Guca. Gideon explains it's named the Demonic Flute and is an artifact that can control even the shadow that reigned over Heimdall during the Dark Ages. Once the bone dragon has been felled, Rean charges for Gideon and slashes the flute in two out of his hands. Gideon pulls out another weapon and threatens to kill Princess Alden, at which point the rest of his comrades join him, Comrades S, V, and C. C states that their objective was to cause disorder, and that has been achieved. Harming a member of the Imperial family would gain nothing for them, and so Gideon orders their release. C then clarifies that they've offered goodwill by letting the two girls go, and therefore Class 7 should let them leave peacefully as there is no need for any bloodshed, but of course they refuse. C offers to be the one to test their mettle, and readies himself with a double saber from the Dark Ages, and so the battle ensues. Given that Maki and Elia are guarding the princess and Elise, it is only Rean, Fee and Laura that partake in this battle. Even though it's 3 against 1, they don't stand a chance and are completely overpowered by C. The 4 comrades introduce themselves formally as the Imperial Liberation Front and leave us with the words, "In our hearts the flames of silent anger, in our hands the hammer of judgment that shall topple the dictator." That is their cause, their purpose. The RMP and Sara finally make their arrival, but it's too late. C triggers a bomb and they all make their escape whilst the tunnel begins to collapse above them. The princess and Elise regain their consciousness after escaping, but there is no chance of catching the Imperial Liberation Front. Claire orders the RMP agents to scour the area one more time and then join the others in restoring order to the city. Everyone eventually gathers at Valflame Palace, where Princes Oliver and Cedric, Princess Alphan, and Elise all thank them for their assistance in both the security detail and the resulting recovery of the 2 girls. Fee says that Cedric is pretty cute, and Alphan says that he should get some lessons of manliness from Class 7, putting the prince on the spot. Governor Regnus echoes the thanks for helping and congratulates them on completing their field study. He goes on further to say that despite the 3 board of directors having their own agendas for Class 7, at the very least he wishes for them to enjoy their student life as much as possible, and believes the other 2 would agree there. Oliver says that he has always found him to be a trustworthy man, but, and almost perfectly on cue, a deep voice echoes from the back. It's Chancellor Osborne. As he joins the crowd, he assures Oliver that they have begun a nationwide hunt for members of the Imperial Liberation Front and are currently running background checks on them as well. Oliver sarcastically responds with, "Nothing gets past you, does it?" Oof, there's clearly some tension here, huh? Of course, if you've played any of the previous games, once again you'll know at least to some extent what the reason for this may be. The Chancellor turns his attention to Class 7 and formally introduces himself to them. He lets them know that since Principal Van Dyke was his superior back when they were both in the army, he is looking to grant Class 7 some additional assistance, which will be ready in a few weeks' time. Interestingly, Oliver grunts out displeasure to this statement. His final words are, "Nurture the bonds you share and train up bodies and wills of steel, for I have no doubt you'll need them in the turbulent times to come." Rean feels another tug on his chest and the scene fades. Oh, looks like things are really heating up here, huh? God, what a massive difference from the ending of chapter 3, right? Well, it's only going to get better and better in the chapters to follow, so stay with me and I'll get you through this as fast as I can. That's gonna about do it for this one though, so please hit the subscribe button along with the bell icon, like, share, comment, and let me know your thoughts on how chapter 4 went down. When you first played it, did it hype you enough to keep wanting to play more and more? Or if you haven't played it before, then are you excited to know more now? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching this one through, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.